It's not enough to feel the music. Hearing it was the best part. That's what nobody seems to understand. I have the memory of what it once sounded like, but those memories will fade as I get older, and I will be left with nothing of the melodies I once loved. They try to get me to play again, but for what? For the enjoyment of others, so that they can hear and love what I can't. The unfair advantage that they have over me fueled my hate, and is what drove me to do it. But before I confess to any of my accused crimes, I must tell you first how it all began. It was an evening of despair. My paternal grandfather had passed earlier that Sunday morning. My mother took over the responsibility of funeral arrangements because my father's first thought was to drink away his sorrows with a bottle of cheap liquor. My father often drank, and when he did, well, let's just say he wasn't pleasant to be around. But with the death of my grandfather, my mother found a way to justify the actions of my father that took place that dreadful night. I only ever wanted to please my father. Whatever I was told to do, I did. Partly out of fear and partly because I wanted to be a good daughter, which is why I did what he told me to do that night. I sat at the piano and played my father's favorite classical, sorrowful song. I played the whole song through, and when it ended, my father wanted me to play it again, and again, and again. After a while, my fingers began to ache and I wanted to stop, but my father would not let me. As my hands grew more tired and my back started to hurt from the upright position I was in, I started to mess up the song. This angered my father. He looked at me dead in the eyes with his cold, dark, sad coals. He grabbed me by the throat and told me to play it right, or else. I tried, but fear and exhaustion got the better of me. Father pulled me off the bench by my hair and put me in a chair where he tied me up like he had many times before. I knew I was going to be punished, but I never imagined it would be this. Father once broke my index finger because I accidentally kept pressing the C key rather than the D key. However, my finger healed, and he wanted to punish me in a way that would be a permanent reminder of my mistakes. I was tied to the chair with my arms, unable to stop what was about to happen next. He spat the words at me, and they continued to echo in my memory. He told me that I played like I was deaf, and I played with no heart. He said that if I was going to play deaf, then I didn't deserve to hear. He grabbed 2 cotton swabs and placed them in each one of my ears. Then, as I realized what was about to happen next, I screamed. Just as my scream escaped my lips, I felt the warm liquid pour from my ears. My mouth was open, my throat rattled, but I heard no sound. After that night, I felt like my life was over. But as I grew, so did my hate for my father. So when I finally had the chance, I took it. I tied my old frail father to the chair that he had tied me to so many times before. I pointed the sharp, bladed knife to his chest and reminded him that he told me I played piano with no heart. So I would take his. Down the bridge and over the stump, there lives a little girl. Her mommy sings, her daddy works, and her best friend is a squirrel. She loves to sing and laugh and play until the sun has gone away. Then one day, the little girl was up without the sun. The mommy screamed and told the girl to run, run, run. She thought it was playtime, but it wasn't daytime, so she ran without the sun. But nonetheless, she merely thought it was all just for fun. She jumped over the stump and down the bridge, took a left at Old Creek Ridge. It was there they were waiting, the girl for the taking, but it was all just for fun. She loved to sing and laugh and play, until her son had gone away. Down the bridge and over the stump, there lived a family of 3. The mommy sang, the daddy worked, and the little girl was always happy. Mommy was found, her mouth still open, but no songs left to sing. Daddy was found, his eyes still open, but no work left for working. The little girl who loved to sing and laugh and play, nobody knows who took her away. I hear their joyous sounds all day, the laughter of children as they run and play, the innocence within their tiny frames, unaware as they play their foolish games. The sun is their safety, the wind their protector, but even a bee gets fooled by by flower nectar. As long as they're home before darkness falls, they're safe from the monsters outside their home walls. Or so they think. Little do they know what waits outside. In darkness, in sunlight, there's nowhere to hide. Because when the monsters have locked you in their sight, they care not about darkness or light. Heed my warning, don't be like me. I'm stuck where nature can't set me free. I was tricked by nature's serenity. Now all I am is lost, a memory. Children fear the wrong monsters, the fictional ones. I met true evil after my mom told me to run, run, run. I live alone, so it's not uncommon that my brain plays tricks on me. I often hear noises like knocks on the walls, feet shuffling on the carpet, and rustling in the backyard bushes. You know, the usual stuff. I can typically debunk it to neighborhood cats, or just the common creaks of an old house. That is, until one night. I was laying in bed, watching TV, when suddenly, I heard the bushes rustling in my backyard. As I said, whenever I check, it's always a neighborhood cat. So this time, I chose to ignore it. But the rustling continued along with the sound of dragging across the outside wall. It was a bit windy that night, so I assumed it was the wind and drew my attention back to the TV. That is until I heard noises coming from inside my house. It wasn't the typical feet shuffling on the carpet, but rather things being knocked over and doors being creaked open and shut. Rather than be dumb and go see what it was, I immediately shut and locked my bedroom door. I then grabbed my phone and called 911. After I explained the situation to the operator, she informed me that she would send officers to my house to check on me. She told me to hide in the meantime, and that she would stay on the phone with me until the officers got to my house. The only place to hide in my room was the closet, so I crammed my way in there and tried to calm my breathing. That is until I heard a gentle tapping on my bedroom door. I went completely silent, and the operator on the phone noticed and asked if I was okay. Afraid that the intruder would hear my phone, I hung up on the operator. The tapping continued, and I could hear whoever it was attempting to turn my bedroom handle. Then suddenly, the noises stopped. I checked the time on my phone and waited 10 minutes before exiting my closet. I know I was supposed to stay put, but I wanted to hear if the intruder was still out there. Suddenly, there was a banging on my front door. A voice announced themselves as the police. I remained in my room, staring at my locked door. What if the intruder was pretending to be the police? What if they had heard me call and this was their way of getting me to leave my room? I couldn't risk it. I remained frozen, standing in front of my door. Then suddenly I heard noises in the backyard again. The intruder probably heard the police and was attempting to escape through the backyard. I couldn't let them get away. What if they came back to seek revenge for me calling the police? What if they came back just to finish what they started? They obviously wanted me, and that's why they wanted me to come out of my room. I had to do something. I grabbed my metal baseball bat from the side of my bed and ripped open the back door connecting my bedroom to the backyard. In the dark, I saw the silhouette of a figure, and without thinking, I began beating it with my bat. The figure fell to the floor, and I just kept hitting, and hitting, and hitting. I saw those scary movies where the bad guy gets up after one hit, so I wanted to make sure that this one would stay down. After one final hard whack, I stopped, and returned to my bedroom to turn on the outside light. That's when I saw the baseball bat dent in my grass. There was nothing there. As I said, my brain plays tricks on me sometimes. Silly brain, you really got me this time. I love art, but it never seemed to love me back. I've tried painting with no success, drawing with no success. I even tried sculpting, but still, with no success. I was talentless when it came to art, but I loved it so much. I dedicated hours of time in museums, studying, and spent thousands of dollars on art classes and art supplies. But nothing worked for me, and every teacher I had told me that I should find a different hobby. But I wasn't ready to give up. Art would love me back. I had signed up for another sculpting class, in an attempt to try my hand at it again. I just needed to find the right teacher that could mold me into the artist I wanted so badly to be. My new teacher's name was William. He started our first class off by showing his complete sculptures. His favorite material to use was clay, and he used it so well. He had various pieces, but the one that stood out to me the most was a full body figure of an elderly woman sitting on a chair. I raised my hand and asked about the muse for the figure, and he explained that it was a sculpture of his deceased maternal grandmother, who he was very close to. He proceeded to tell us that his mother requested the sculpture, so that when the grandmother passed away, she would always be with them. Some students began whispering among themselves at how the sculpture freaked them out. To be honest, a cold chill ran down my spine when I looked at her as well. William read everyone's expressions, and continued the story saying that his mother was also freaked out by the realisticness of the sculpture, and that is why it now sits in a studio under a sheet. He said that he contemplated destroying it, but that felt like he would be losing his grandmother all over again. Everyone nodded understandably, and William wheeled the sculpture away to the corner of the room, but he didn't cover it. As he continued teaching, I couldn't help but be distracted by the sculpture in the corner. She sat there, watching us. When class ended, many people ran out of the room, suggesting that they weren't coming back. But instead of walking towards the door, I walked towards the sculpture in the corner. William saw me do so and followed me. I looked closer at her face, and the realism was incredible. Every wrinkle and curve of her face was executed amazingly. I no longer felt a cold chill when looking at it. I felt envious. I turned around to William and told him that I wanted to learn how to do that. He laughed and said that realism takes years of practice, and I would have to begin with sculpting easier things. But I refused. I told him that I wouldn't wait years to learn, and that I would pay him double for private lessons. And so I did. We spent 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, sculpting for 2 months straight. Yet none of my work was satisfactory. William tried to encourage me, saying that I was getting better, but his encouragement only made me frustrated. My thoughts screamed in my head, why couldn't I be good at this? Why couldn't I be good at anything? Then one day, as our day was coming to an end, William told me that he couldn't continue our classes like this. He was left with no free time because he taught other classes on the weekends. I took up his entire week and I was barely improving. He said that it would be more beneficial for me to just take the weekend classes because I was tiring myself out. But I didn't want to quit. I wasn't ready. So I snapped. I began yelling at William that it was his fault. It was his fault and every other instructor who gave up on me. Who were they to tell me that my dreams were unrealistic? They must not have loved art as much as me if they didn't understand. William turned around and grabbed his tools while I yelled at him. As he was walking away, I screamed for him to come back and listen to me, but he wouldn't. So I grabbed a carving tool and ran up behind him, jabbing it into the side of his neck. He stopped, stunned as he reached up and pulled the tool from his neck. A stream of crimson red immediately began squirting from his wound. He grabbed at his neck, trying to get it to stop, but he fell to his knees, then on his side, and eventually rolled onto his back before passing out. I stood above him, staring down at his handsome face. His features were a work of art themselves. So I went over to my clump of freshly wet clay and began covering his face in it. I formed the clay around his prominent features, and before I knew it, he looked like his grandmother. A beautiful representation of realism art. I proceeded to cover his entire body in clay to finish my first real work of art. And that, listeners, is how art came to love me back. He is engraved in my memory. Light brown hair, a small mole on his left cheek below his blue eye, olive skin, and about 5'9". That's the description I gave the police. I gave them an accurate sketch and everything, yet have they caught him? No. All I want is justice. He killed my baby sister and I was forced to watch. I couldn't help her, but I saw him. I saw him, Katie. I memorized his face for you, so that I could avenge you. The detectives tell me they're doing everything that they can to find him, but they're not motivated because they didn't see what I saw him do to you. I saw the blood pour from your throat as he sliced across it from behind you. I saw as he let your body fall and run away. The coward didn't even have the decency to look at you as you took your last breath. I'm just glad you didn't have to see him. Maybe you'll find peace in the afterlife not knowing who murdered you. But I won't rest, because I know who did it. The police may not have a clue, but I do. I do, Katie. I found him, baby sister. I just have to find the right time to seek my revenge. I have been following him every day for 2 weeks straight. I studied his weekly routine, and I know when the perfect opportunity to strike is. He takes an evening walk in the park every Tuesday, probably searching for his next victim. But I won't let him get that far. I'll be ready. Tuesday finally came, Katie. I wore all black clothing and black gloves and had my knife ready. I pulled my hoodie over my head and I followed him on his walk until we were out of view of anyone. He had headphones in, so he couldn't hear me coming. I caught up to him and sliced his throat so that he could know how it felt to be you. But unlike him, I watched him fall flat on his back. I stood above him, looking down at his face that had haunted me since the moment I first saw it. His dark brown hair, hazel eyes, tan skin, and mole on his lower right cheek. Then, I couldn't help myself. I knelt down and started stabbing him in the chest, over and over and over again. His blood splattered my face, and in my mouth, and all over my clothes. But I couldn't stop. I was so mad, Katie. I finally stood back up, dropped the knife, and ran away. I got him for you, Katie Bug. I finally got him this time. Or so I thought. As I was getting into my car, I saw him, walking down the sidewalk, the same face that haunted my nightmares, with his brownish blonde hair, pale skin, brown eyes, and mole on his chin. It was him this time, Katie. I swear it's him this time. I was wrong all the other times, but this is him. I just have to find the right time to seek my revenge. I'll be ready for him. I enjoy cutting people off when I drive. There's a thrill in knowing that somebody has to slam on their brakes to avoid hitting me. It's my regular driving routine, and I can't stop. I won't stop. What are they going to do? By the time their brains register what just happened, I'm already speeding down the road. But if I have a chance, I like to look at them in my rearview mirror and see the look of anger on their face as they curse at me. I'm sure they spend the rest of their day thinking about me. If that isn't the definition of satisfying, I don't know what is. I leave an impression on people, and whether it's bad or good, it's still an impression. One beautiful sunny day, I was driving down a 2-lane freeway when I began tailing the car in front of me because it was not driving fast enough for me. Without a glance, I swerved over to the left lane, cutting off a blue sedan. They slammed on their brakes, and I took off down the highway without a second thought. As I approached the exit to my house, I again cut off a car in the right lane to get off at my exit. But I was stopped at a red light immediately after exiting the freeway, and that is when I noticed a blue sedan got off the freeway behind me. but I didn't think twice about it once the light turned green, so I continued to my house, cutting off as many cars as I could along the way. I pulled up to the large automatic gate that met the beginning of my property line and coasted through it as it opened. I pulled around to the back of my house towards the garage and drove in to park. As I was getting out of my car, I noticed a blue sedan parked behind me, outside the garage. The two men got out of their car, so I hurriedly rushed to the door that connected to my house. But the two men were fast and managed to get through the door as well, letting it shut behind them. They began calling me every derogatory name in the book and threatened to physically hurt me. They seemed satisfied that they had me right where they wanted me. Their postures were confident, and their heads were held high. They had their fists balled up in anger, ready to swing when the time was right. But I stared at them as they yelled. One man's face was red with anger, and the other man's brows began to furrow, and a look of worry crossed his face, as he realized I appeared unafraid of them and their threats. A smile began to spread across my face. The now worried one of the two nudged the other man before backing towards the door to the garage. That is when he realized the door did not have an inside handle. They were too blinded with anger to realize that they were not in a room of my house at all, but rather a private studio with no windows and no other doors. Only I knew the way out of this room, and only I was going to leave it. You see, I like cutting people off when I drive, but I especially like when they follow me home.